It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Smooth and Savvy is joined by Light and Fluffy for an hour of talk, music, and fun, along with our own Periscope girl. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Smooth and Savvy himself, Douglas Coleman.
Hey, ho, hi, how are you? It's me, Douglas Coleman. Welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show. We don't have much time at all. We have two great interviews that both ran long, and I just hate to edit good content, so we just are going to get right through this intro very quickly and get right on to the interviews. I've got two interviews today. First one is a Liverpool musician, singer-songwriter named John Jenkins. And the second one is a fantastic magician illusionist named Michael Grandinetti. So we will be right back with John Jenkins after this commercial message.
Hi there, this is Stuart Epps from the UK, record producer, engineer. You might have heard of me. I've worked with artists from Elton John to Led Zeppelin to Bad Company, Twisted Sister, Robbie Williams, Oasis, many great bands and artists in the past and the present and hopefully in the future. But you can work with me as well. You know, all you got to do is get in touch with me on eppsmusicproductions.com. That's EPPsproductionsmusic.com. And I can help you with your productions and with your recordings. A lot of people do home recordings now, which you can only take so far. Maybe they need a bit of professional help. So get in touch with me and we can sort it out. And thanks for Douglas Coleman for giving me the spot. Thanks a lot. Cheers, bye.
Okay, my guest today is John Jenkins. John is a singer-songwriter. He was born in Liverpool, England. He has supported Elvis Costello, The Beat, Echo, and the Bunnymen. Has had 5 BBC Radio 1 sessions with bands Come in Tokyo, The Persuaders, John Peel, Kid Jensen, and Janice Long. John was joint audience winner of the 2014 Liverpool Songwriters Challenge with his song Put the World to Right. His song Summer of 76 has been shortlisted for the 2015 Showcase Final, which will be held on November 27, 2015. He has released Paris Wife and Sweet Delphine, and currently working on a solo album called Trains. Please welcome John Jenkins. So, hello, John. How are you?
I'm fine, Douglas. How are you?
I'm very good. Right off the bat, when I read your bio, and I'm sure that people have said this, probably Americans more than anybody else have said this, but as soon as I hear musician from Liverpool, of course, the first thing that I think of is the Beatles. The Beatles sort of put Liverpool on the map for a lot of people who, I would say for Americans and anybody who wasn't really familiar with England. I don't know exactly how old you are, and I don't want to ask if you don't want to volunteer.
No problem, Sally. I'm 56.
Okay, 50. So, well, I'm 53, so we're round about the same age.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were definitely alive when the Beatles were happening.
I was, but I was too young, so I would have been a big Beatle fan. I used to be a big Beatle boy when I was like about 16, 17. I could quote every Beatle song number on the label of the Parlophone record label.
Oh, wow.
What was the B-side, the date that it came out, what was the next record, and so on. But when the Beatles did start, the first single was Love Me Do. That was October 62. I was only 3. So it was, I obviously knew about the Beatles when I was a little boy growing up. But my real interest in the Beatles was when I was a teenager. I remember getting Sgt. Pepper. I knew the songs, all the singles and all the famous songs. Some songs you just didn't realise weren't singles. In America, I realised that a lot of songs were singles that weren't singles in the UK. So things like Michelle, I think might have been an American single, but it was just an album track off Rubber Soul, or the UK Rubber Soul album. So yeah, I was young, but I was aware of. Yeah, it certainly put Liverpool on the map.
Well, one of the things that happened, unfortunately, with the Beatles is when they signed their record deal with Capitol Records, Capitol completely screwed everything they did. They would send them the masters from Abbey Road. Capitol Records would chop them up, take song from this one and from this one, and make two different albums, and albums that didn't come out in the UK at all. It was sort of the inspiration for the Beatles' Butcher cover. I think you've probably seen that.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of a, 2 fingers up to Capitol Records for butchering the way that they did the running order on their albums and things. So when they renewed their contract in 1966, they said, no more. That's one of the stipulations in the contract now. You keep it exactly the way we send it to you. Don't remix them. Don't take songs off this one and put it on that one. So from 1966 on, all of the American releases are exactly the same as the UK releases. But before they were different.
Yeah. Well, I think it was 1967, actually, with Sgt. Pepper. I think your version of Revolver had less tracks. I think it had 11 tracks, whereas our version had 14.
Okay, you could be right. Yeah, they could be.
Yeah, and I think there was 3 tracks was on Rubber Soul. Should have been on Revolver. Or I think there was an LP called Yesterday and Today, which was the Butcher's one.
Which was the Butcher one, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, when did, I guess the Pepper sessions started in 1966, didn't they?
Yeah.
So
after they gave up doing the tour.
The tours, yeah. So, okay. It's they probably signed the thing somewhere in there. And they said the next album coming out, don't mess about with it. So that was Pepper.
That's right, yeah.
That came out. One thing I wanted to ask you, because you're from Liverpool and a Beatles fan as well, I was always wondering if Liverpool fans of the Beatles felt a certain possessiveness towards the Beatles, like these are our Beatles rather than those Beatles.
You'd think, being in Liverpool, that people would have felt like that, but it wasn't the case. When I started work, when I was in my teens and I started work towards the end of the 70s, it was around about the same time as when punk and new wave bands started. So there was a lot of people getting into that kind of music, and I don't know whether it was a bit of snobbery or whatever, but I didn't have many Beatle people around me that you would obviously think there would be. It was only really when Oasis and Blair and those bands came in the 90s, it seems to be, and the next generation, it seems to be a hip thing to like the Beatles. And then you find that all the people that said they didn't like the Beatles back in the end of the 70s, early 80s, actually did. Johnny Rotten says he likes Alice Cooper, and, and all those people that he said he hated, and, the Clash said they liked all these bands that he didn't like. After all, so but now everyone in Liverpool loves the Beatles, and it's the whole city's geared towards the Beatles.
Well, they named the airport after John Lennon now, didn't they? When did they name the airport?
I think it must have been in the last, definitely in the last 10 years.
Well, I think they're
going to name the conveyor belt after Ringo.
I thought that was fantastic, because I don't think there's another airport in the world that's named after a musician. I think they may have been thinking of naming the Jamaica airport after Bob Marley. I'm not sure.
You think they would too, it's John Lennon Airport. It's full of John Lennon pictures and writings on the wall. Imagines when you walk in, it's got, imagine there's no heaven, above us only sky. I think that's the motto for the John Lennon Airport anyway, above us only sky. So Mad Men, the program Mad Men would have been made up with a line like that, if they were selling an airport, above us only sky,
Well, I think that works well. Tell us about your first gig. Do you remember it?
I do, actually. I was in a band called Come in Tokyo to start off with. And this is a true story. I tell this to everyone. In fact, if I ever get round to writing my autobiography, this is going to be like the first thing I put in the book. People say, have you ever seen U2? And I say, no, but they've seen me. They played, it was October 1981. I think it was the 11th of October. And they were playing in Liverpool. Band I was in, the lead singer, Phil Wiley, his brother Pete Wiley was in War and is quite well known in the English music scene. Was mates with Bono and The Edge, and he went to see U2 and brought them over to the place that we were playing the gig on, and a couple of them were in the audience and saw us at this rehearsal room party. It was great, it was scary. First time ever playing in front of an audience, but it was really, really good. And then we played a gig about 3 or 4 days later on our own right. There was a few bands on, but we were the first ones on. I wish that someone had taken some photographs, but
Did you meet them? Did they say anything to you?
No, I didn't. Pete Wiley said they were there and they enjoyed the show, but I don't know whether he was just being polite. I didn't know they were there, and I wasn't really that much of a U2 person at the time. I think they'd only brought out the first album. I Will Follow might have been the hit single of that time, which is a great song anyway. But
I liked their first one or two albums, and then I lost interest in them.
I did. I think it sounds daft, but I think when they went to America and they were doing the Jericho Tree,
Joshua Tree,
Joshua Tree. They seem to lose that sort of sound that they had, which was quite unique. You know, with the guitar sound. You know,
I agree.
Couldn't really explain it. Yeah.
Did they get a new producer or something when they went to America?
I think what I've read was, I think Bono used to get fed up people saying, "Oh, will you play I Will Follow, or will you play this song, or will you play that song?" And he couldn't play them on the guitar because I think a lot of the songs were just, you know, sort of driven by riffs and stuff like that. So I think he actually went into the studio with the thought, you know, let's start writing some songs that we can actually, you know, sit around and play for people in the parlor or something, you know.
It sort of changed their whole sound, really.
It did, yeah. But then they've gone. They explore sounds, obviously working with Brian Eno. You know, they're quite on the ball with you know, production things. But I think at that time, I think they lost it a little bit for me personally. But that's only a personal opinion. Then again, I wish I'd written some of the songs that they've written. You know, you can't complain with some of the songs they've written. You know.
Well, let's listen to one of the songs you've written because we've got two.
Right.
And
okay.
We need to get to these. We've got It Tears Me Apart and Sweet Delphine. Which one would you like to play first?
I don't mind, Douglas.
All right.
Whatever you want to play.
Well, first one up is It Tears Me Apart. Can you tell us something about that song?
Yeah, it's a song I wrote for the Persuaders, the band I used to be in. At the time, we had a lot of gigs, and I was writing quite a bit, and I came up with that one, but we never actually recorded it. We basically played it a couple of times in the set, and then it was just replaced by another song. But I always had it in mind. I really liked that tune. It's got a little bit of a different time signature in the middle, and I always fancied the girls singing it. So when I came to doing an album with guest vocalists, that was one of the first songs I thought, well, I'll go back and I'll do that one with a girl singer. So that's why I did it. And it's not about anyone in particular. It isn't a song that I wrote about anyone. I just wanted to write a happy love song, really.
Okay. Now, you said you're not singing on it, but you wrote it and you're playing the guitar?
No, I don't play anything on this album.
I see. Okay.
I tried something completely different. I knew a few people that were really good musicians, and I just asked them would they work on an album, you know, of songs of mine. And I wanted to use different singers, depending on which song I did. So that was the idea of the That's Your Thing Honeymoon Hangover album. I just picked songs and wrote songs, especially for different singers, and then I've got a separate thing of my own, doing my own solo career.
All right. What's the name of the singer on this track?
It's a girl called Trisha McTeague. She's amazing, in my opinion.
Okay.
She's worked with Ronan Keaton, who I think was in one of the boy bands, Westlife, I think. She's done some backing singing for him. But yeah, I was talking to the guitarist, Scott, who got the musicians involved, and I asked him, did he know any really good female singers, and he gave me a few names and a few website addresses to check out, and I just fell in love with her voice. I love Dusty Springfield and Shelby Lynn and singers like that, and I just wanted that kind of singer on it. You know, I'd love them to. Well, obviously Dusty Springfield can't sing it, but I'd love Shelby Lynn to sing it. You know, but I got Trisha, who's probably just as good as Shelby.
All right, well, let's have a listen to this. This is called "It Tears Me Apart."
Up yours. We have our disagreements, but we can laugh about them, baby. And when I need somebody to care, you know who I can turn to. Yes, it tears me apart when I can't find you. It tears me apart when I'm not around you. Yes, it tears me apart when I can't find you. We both know where we're going, know where we've come from. We have this mutual understanding. And we know what is right, and we certainly know what is wrong. It doesn't pay to come on too strong. It tears me apart when I'm not around you. Yes, it tears me apart when I can't find you. It tears me apart when I'm not around you. Yes, it tears me apart when I can't find you.
Okay, wow, that was a great song. I really like that. You were right. There's some very interesting changes. I love the change to the chorus, where it seems to sort of drop down a bit. And then there's...
I was quite pleased with that myself,
Yeah, I really like that. I also like the rhythm change in the middle. And it reminds me, we were talking about the Beatles, it reminds me of a Beatles song that does exactly that. I Call Your Name, where they...
Oh, yeah. I love,
It goes into like song, almost like a ska sort of...
Don't you know I come in?
Da, 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 da. And then it has that rhythm change where it goes into sort of a ding, da, ba, ding, da, 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 bam, 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 and it goes back into the... So it reminded me of that.
Subconsciously, maybe I nicked it.
Maybe you nicked it.
No, I don't think I did. No, I mean, I used to call that the Take 5 bit, you know.
Dave Brubeck?
Dave Brubeck,
Oh, that's a great
But
song.
yeah, you're right about the chorus though, because when Trisha came in to sing it, the first thing she said was, "Oh, it doesn't go where you're expected to go. It goes completely in a different place," which I was quite pleased with,
Oh, she's got a fantastic voice. Her voice was just perfect for that song. Yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing, yeah.
Have you done any touring in the U.S.?
No, I haven't. I'd love to, but I never even been given the opportunity,
Have you been to the U.S.?
I've been to New York 4 times. It's my favourite place in the world.
Ah, what were you doing there?
Leisure.
Okay.
Although I did go to a few concerts. Went to see Ricky Lee Jones one year, and Corin Bailey Ray another year at the Bowery Ballroom, CBGB's, that area. Wanted to see that.
Very famous clubs.
Big block.
Yeah.
And saw Blondie. I think it was the Kodak rooms or theatre. Is it
Kodak Theatre?
Camera company?
Yeah.
Which was amazing because obviously the New York band, and seeing them on home ground, I suppose it's a bit like people coming to Liverpool and seeing Paul McCartney,
Ricky Lee Jones, there's a name I have not heard in years.
I love Ricky Lee.
Oh, yeah. What was her big hit? What was the song?
Chucky's in Love.
Chucky's in Love, that's it. I used to love that song. Oh, you Chucky's in Love.
I do.
Yes. Wow, that's a blast from the past.
I love the album, it's a great album. Some great songs on it. She just brought a new album out, actually. I haven't actually got to know it that well, but it sounds really good on first play.
She just put out a new album?
I think in the last 2 or 3 months, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll have to look that one up. Let's get to your other song. Let's get to Sweet Delphine. Tell us about that one.
Well, that's a solo song. That's me singing and playing. And what happened was I wasn't really a singer. When I was in bands and stuff, I was always the songwriter and the keyboard player. And I done a songwriting challenge last year in Liverpool where you go into this place and you pick a painting and you write a song about it. And I actually got in the final. Then I was joint audience winner. And one of the prizes was going in the studio to actually record the song. So normally I would have got someone else in to sing the song for me, but I actually didn't have enough time to do it. So I just done a version and I submitted it, got in the final, found out that I had to sing it live, and I actually was joint audience winner. And then I ended up winning the prize of actually recording the song. And it didn't sound too bad when I came to listen back to it, and I thought, well, I'll do another song. So the second song was the song Sweet Delphine. But I've been listening to a lot of Fairport Convention songs and Richard Thompson and Sandy Denny stuff, and I wanted to write a song like that kind of folky English storytelling song. And I knew that I wanted it was like a painting. I wanted to make it sort of like very colourful and dramatic. So I got asked around for the violin player and accordion player, because I knew immediately what kind of palette I wanted to have the song based on. And they came in and they just made it unbelievable for me, And since then, I've just been working on an album with those people and writing new stuff that's a bit more less poppy but more personal. But that one is just like a folky ballad story song,
All right. And you're singing this one?
I'm singing that one, yeah.
Well, this is the first time I'm listening to it, so...
Okay.
Okay, this is Sweet Delphine. Sweet Delphine by John Jenkins.
When my ship sailed into town, The captain told us, boys, take a look around. A little tavern down a winding road. We all made merry, the drinks did flow. All my life I've been a sailor, seen the seven wonders, sailed the seven seas. But I have never seen such beauty as my sweet Delphine. She told me she had traveled far. We talked all night until the last fading star. All my life I've been faithful, faithful to my captain, faithful to the sea. Should I disregard my calling and give it up to stay with my sweet Delphine? Life can be cruel, life can be good. Captain Hart once told me, I'll come and see this girl for myself. Give my blessing to you and Delphine. Surprises that I could never foresee, but I was never more surprised when my captain took her hand, gave up his post to marry my sweet Delphine.
No, well, that was very nice. That sort of took me
thank you.
away. Reminded me a little bit of Gordon Lightfoot.
Right, oh yeah.
Lightfoot. What was that?
Hello, I'm here. I don't know.
Are you pressing buttons?
No, and it's someone in the house using the microwave.
Oh, wow. I've never had that happen. I did have an interview with a guy who was using are you using an iPhone or a...
It's an iPhone, yeah.
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 And he didn't silence his text message vibration noise thing. So apparently this guy was quite popular because about every 3 minutes it would just go like that. And you could hear it. It would just come straight through the interview. So finally we had to stop the interview, and I said, can you just switch that off for now, please? But oh, that one was interesting.
Well, that's why I went into them.
That's strange that the microwave would do that, though. Wow. Okay.
I think it's electrical impulses. I think it's strange. Where I live, it's really strange, all the what goes on,
Well, are you in Liverpool now?
I'm still here. Yeah, I'm on the Wirral, which is just over the road. I've moved over onto the posher side.
Okay, John. Well, listen, we are out of time and we've got to wrap this up. Please tell everybody where they can find you on the web. Tell us your website, please.
Yeah, well, it's www.johnjenkinsmusic.com. johnjenkinsmusic.com. I'd just like to say thank you very much, Douglas, for inviting me onto the program.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. And I think your music is fantastic. And I could sit here and talk with you about the Beatles all day. I'm a huge Beatles fan.
If you ever come over, you're more than welcome to stay a few days and have a couple of pints.
Oh, I'll show
you all the Liverpool sites,
I would love it. I've never been to Liverpool. I would love to go and just be the Beatles tourist, But you're my first guest on this show from Liverpool. We've had quite a few from the UK, but nobody from Liverpool. Okay, John. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Douglas.
Pleasure talking with you. All right, take care.
And now...
Hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
Again?
Nothing up my sleeve. Presto!
Wrong hat.
I take a 7.5.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
Okay, my very special guest today is Michael Grandinetti, and he is not your ordinary magician. I was going to say musician, but magician. With performances on national and international television in stadiums, arenas, casinos, and theaters around the country. With Oscar-winning composers and symphony orchestras, he has performed at NFL halftime shows and major sporting events, also for Fortune 500 companies and even at the White House. Michael has made a name for himself around the world as an extremely talented and innovative illusionist. He has had starring roles on NBC's The World's Most Dangerous Magic 2, The CW's Masters of Illusion, and Pop TV's Don't Blink, and has also been featured on the Emmy-nominated Fox series Bones, The Bold and the Beautiful, Access Hollywood, Entertainment Tonight, Sports Center, NBA on TNT, New York Today, Fox and Friends, Crook and Chase, and the Jerry Lewis MDA Telethon. Please welcome Michael Grandinetti. Yay. How are you, Michael?
Douglas, thank you so much for having me on. It's good to talk to you.
Oh, it's great talking to you, too. First thing I wanted to ask you was, do you prefer illusionist or magician? It seems to me that magician wasn't politically correct anymore.
Well, to be quite honest, that's a good question. To be quite honest with you, I am both. A magician is somebody who does magic. And that is certainly, magic is my passion. Magic is my profession. The word illusionist basically describes a certain branch of magic, which typically is the larger style of magic. For example, if you see somebody making a lady float in the air or making a large object disappear, those are typically in our field known as illusion. I love all facets of magic, from close-up magic to illusions, but I work primarily as an illusionist, so I'm both.
Okay. You were on the Jerry Lewis Telethon. What year were you on that?
I was on that about 10 years ago. We did it twice, and it was a lot of fun. And it was, that's live television. And because it's live and because they're putting so much into it, when you do, let's say you're performing for 7 minutes, you can't be 7 minutes and 2 seconds. You have to be 7 minutes. So great exercise in being, we always try and be very precise, but, that's one of my biggest memories of that was that, that they really, ran a tight ship, as you have to in live television. But we had a lot of fun with it, and it was wonderful to perform for such a good cause.
Did you get to meet Jerry?
I did. The first year we were there, he, came by quickly, and he has to approve. One of the most flattering things for me was that still, even at that point, the telethon had been on for many years. It was certainly a well-oiled machine, but he still had to approve everybody who was on it. So he would sit in the control room, from what I'm told, and if he didn't like something, he was pretty honest about it. So the fact that we got asked back right after our first performance was incredibly flattering to me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so he was certainly there, and it's a great memory.
Now, did you have to audition for that to begin with?
No, we had already been doing shows around the country for quite a while. So we were invited to do it. And, it wasn't something that we had to, audition for. It was quite an honor to be asked.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, big honor. Well, you said that show's been on a while. I know that show has been on since 1966. So yeah. That is a long-running show. I mean, that's probably the record. I don't know of any other show that's been, except for maybe CBS News,
Exactly.
That's been on longer.
Oh no, I'm just gonna. If you think about the money that they've raised to help the cause of muscular dystrophy and to help all the people who are stricken with it, and what a great project to be a part of.
Oh, absolutely. Are your illusions your own intellectual property? I mean, is this something that you created? If somebody else wanted to do it, they would have to come to you to get permission or pay you or get a license from you to do a particular illusion that you do?
Yeah, that's 100% the right way to do it. And that's the way that, we have some pieces in our show that the ideas are based on principles created by some other magic designers, and we've asked for permission. That's 100% the right way to do it. The illusions in any show are basically a combination of building blocks. It's like musical notes. You could take 8 musical notes and make 1 million different songs, 1 billion different songs.
Sure.
Magic is the same. You're combining different principles to create different illusions. I'll give you a couple of examples. So, one illusion in our show is a piece that's completely original to me. It's a piece where I walk through a steel wall. It's a 7 foot tall, 4 foot wide, 1 inch thick, this giant plate of steel. And we have the audience come up and they examine it and they rub their hands over it and they prove that it's completely solid, very strong, very heavy. And I walk right through the center of it. Now that's a piece that I designed that hasn't been done before. The way that we do it, the style that we do it, the magic technology that we use to do it. So that's something that somebody couldn't just perform. They couldn't, take it and do it. It certainly belongs to, our show. There's another piece where it's another original piece where it's a lifeless plant, and I take the plant back in time and it becomes a little sprout, and then it grows into this full blooming rose bush. And I pick the roses off and I give them to the audience. That's another original idea that's kind of ours in the show. So, the key is in anything, whether you're in magic or whether you're in music or whether you're whether you're a comedian, respecting, ethically the creations of other people. And for me, I enjoy coming up with pieces that are unique to our show. That to me is very fun. It's very satisfying to perform and to watch an audience respond to something that you've put a lot of time and effort into creating. That steel wall illusion I just mentioned, that took about 7 years to bring to life. So, when you put all that work into it and then you see an audience respond, it's a wonderful feeling.
Now, are there people that just do that for a living, like create illusions, but maybe they don't necessarily perform them?
Yes, absolutely. There's some fantastic magic designers out there. There's a piece in our show where I shrink a girl down to the size of a basketball. And that is a piece that was designed by a magic designer who is he's one of the best. And there are just a lot of talented people out there. But he doesn't perform, but he designs illusions that are just wonderful. So yeah, to answer your question, absolutely, yes.
Okay. Well, see, I didn't know that. I didn't know, like songs, songwriters would write songs and put them in a publishing catalog, and then singers would come and say, oh, I want to do that one and that one. I didn't know if it was the same thing for illusions, but are there illusion catalogs that you can go to and actually?
No, there really aren't. I mean, magic is a small industry, I think like a lot of industries are. I mean, relatively small. There are hundreds of thousands of magicians around the world, but surprisingly, magicians tend to know each other. They know what's going on in the industry. They know, who's performing what out there. And there's not anything formal as far as here's a list of illusions, but you kind of, especially today with all the access we have around the world to see, we can go on YouTube and watch people perform in any corner of the world. So,
right.
The visibility of seeing that is certainly there. So, I try personally for me, I try and keep a watch on, always what's going on in the industry. I like to see who's performing and what's going on and how audiences are responding to different illusions in different cities and different countries. So, I think a lot of magicians are the same. We always like to know what's going on in the industry. So that's kind of how that works.
If you're watching somebody else, I don't want to use the term your competition, but let's just say somebody else, another illusionist, and he's doing an illusion. Do you always know how he's doing it?
I wish I could say that I don't, but it's hard to turn off the magician switch. I started magic when I was 5. And so it's been a very, I've had magic in my head for many, many years, and it becomes a way of thinking. And I think a lot of performers in any art form will tell you this. And I think a lot of even movie directors, will tell you they'll watch other people's movies and they'll analyze the cuts and they'll analyze the way it was shot and the way the music was laid in.
Right.
You just think like that. I would love to be able to shut that off and sit back and just be amazed, because it's a rare feeling. That's why I tell people, when people say, how do you do it? My answer is, you really don't want to know. because you're not hurting the magician. You're robbing yourself of a really rare, fantastic feeling, which is being amazed. So no, I tend to watch magic like a magician, and I'll analyze it, but I'll tell you this much: the plus side of that is that I can watch another magician, and I love watching magic. I absolutely love it. I can appreciate the thought behind it, the creativity behind it. I'll know the work that goes into it, so I can sort of watch it and enjoy it and appreciate it from a different perspective than the non-magician audience would. Another thing about magic is that I don't think people realize is it takes a lot of work. I mean, the goal is to make it look easy. When you go up on stage, you want to make it look like the magic is just effortless.
Oh, right.
But behind that is just a lot of work. I'll be able to watch magicians and know what they put into it and really kind of applaud them for that. It's a different perspective, but I still enjoy watching it nonetheless.
Well, I guess it's like musicians who listen to other musicians and songwriters' songs. I don't listen to a song like somebody who wasn't a musician in the sense that, oh, well, that's a nice tune. I'm always analyzing, oh, we used that chord there, or oh, we did this, or oh, from a production standpoint. So I don't listen to music, even like music that I grew up with, like the Beatles or Elton John or something that as a little kid I was in awe of. But now when I listen to it, it's like, oh, he did that, and oh, he did. So I guess it's kind of the same thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Whatever the art form is that you do, I think it really becomes a way of thinking. Magic is constantly rolling through my mind, obviously if we're rehearsing or if we're traveling, but even if I'm driving somewhere. Now, obviously I'm focusing on driving, but the magic is still, you just don't shut it off. It's just always there. And I think musicians, I've heard the same thing from, where the music's always in their head. And, I think that's kind of applicable to any art form. So yeah, it's always with you. It's not a 9-to-5 job for sure. It's a lifestyle.
Well, it's funny you mentioned driving, because I think I've written some of my best songs while I was driving. It's for some reason that kind of, your mind tends to wander. I mean, obviously you're concentrating on the road, but I think a lot of people can drive very autonomously, especially if you do it long enough. You kind of, it's muscular memory, and the brain tends to disappear, especially if you're on the freeway or something. And I've had some of the wildest inspirations for songs and tunes come to me while I was driving. And one of the tricks that we used to do back before the days of iPhones and things was we used to call our answering machine at home and sing the tune onto the recording. So when you got home, it was there, because otherwise you'd forget it. By the time you got home, if it was an hour or something, it would be gone. So that was one of the tricks that we used to do. It's just funny that you mentioned that, because I think maybe a lot of creative people get some of their best ideas while they're driving.
Absolutely. And it comes in many different places. I mean, I sit in LA traffic a lot. So there's an example of, sometimes you're not even moving and you're just sitting there. But I think you're basically, there's nothing else to really distract you. So your mind is free to just kind of wander and solve the problem that you may be, thinking of as far as from a creative standpoint. It's funny. So going back to that steel wall illusion, that idea came, I heard a piece of music, and it just instantly, that whole idea for the steel wall illusion popped into my head. I could just see one hand coming through the wall, and then the other hand coming through the wall, and then me pulling my whole body through the wall. And that was really, talking about where ideas come from. That was a case where the whole thing just suddenly appeared in my mind, inspired by the music. And tying it into the music is that just tells you the power of music, I think, in any art form, how it paints a picture, it makes you feel something. It has certainly inspired the magic that I do. And the music in our show, we really try and make it fit the magic like a glove. So the idea is it's really interesting where they come from. You never know where the next one's going to come from.
Well, true enough. So it's as much of a creative process, it sounds like, as it is a technical process. Once you get the idea, then you've got to put it to work in a technical aspect to make the actual illusion work. I want to go back a little bit. Just give us a quick background on yourself, because I'm curious. You said you started doing magic when you were 5. Who were some of your idols growing up? Who did you watch, or what inspired you actually to start doing it?
Well, I'm lucky. I realize looking back on it now that finding what you love to do at a young age it's rare. And so I was very, very lucky. I like a lot of kids, I got a magic set for Christmas, and I was just hooked. I was hooked on it. I don't know. I can't tell you why. There was just something about it that I just knew that this was what I wanted to do. And, and I watched everything that I could about magic. I can't say that there was any one person that was a role model or anything like that, but in the magic realm. But I would watch anytime the TV listings would come on Saturday afternoons in the newspapers. I would go through. First thing I would do as soon as the paper would come, as a 10-year-old kid, is I'd pull it out and I'd go through line by line and see if any magicians were going to be on any TV shows. And I would, set the VCR. Remember VCRs? I would set the VCR to tape them. And I just couldn't I would check the school library and the neighborhood library and look for any magic books. And they had some really good magic books. And we found a magic store in downtown Pittsburgh where I'm from. And every couple of weeks, my dad would take me down there and I would spend my allowance on new magic, and I would spend hours and hours in there, and he couldn't get me to leave. He'd always have to go out and continue putting more money in the parking meter because I just never wanted to leave. And I just couldn't learn. I couldn't be around magic enough, and I couldn't learn it fast enough. I just was very drawn to it and motivated to study it. And quite honestly, all these years later, 30 years later, I still have that same passion for it and excitement for it and kind of hunger for it.
There is some sort of magic school or university or something. Is that right? I mean, you can actually go and study this formally?
No, I mean, outside of, I think, some of the movies that came out that kind of depict that, I don't think that there is nothing like a formal school for magic. There are some online resources where people can, I think they're like subscription basis where every month you get some videos and some different pointers on how to do magic, but there's nothing really as a formal sit-down physical, location for that. But you know what? I think one of the interesting things about how I learned was that I came up in a time before there was YouTube, before there was the internet. I mean, I'm not that old, but there was kind of right before all that started coming in. And so it forced me to have to go out and be very proactive in finding, in learning magic and finding out about magic and in figuring out how to do it. And I think that was a benefit. I really do. So I always encourage people to, whatever their art form is or whatever their passion is in general, search it out. Take the long road to get there, because what you'll pick up on that journey is very beneficial. You'll pick up more things than you realize. That that kind of student mentality is still with me. Because it wasn't at my fingertips, like I said. So I mean, that's a roundabout answer to your question, but I think there's a benefit of people kind of doing it on their own and coming up with their own style and their own way of doing it. I think that's what really makes the performer really shine. And honestly, I think that's what allows them to have fun with it, is because they're being themselves and they're communicating themselves to the audience. And to me, that's a big key about what I do, is being the same guy you have on, that you have on Skype right now is the guy that goes up on stage. I'm not a different person up there. So for me, it's really important to communicate myself to the audience. And by the end of the show, I hope people feel like they know me personally. That's really, that's important to me.
One of the things that I told you in the email was that your coincidental timing was great, because I had just finished reading a thing about Harry Houdini. It stuck in my head that, I've never had an illusionist on the show. I've always had musicians primarily, a lot of authors, film directors, all aspects of the entertainment industry is what I like to do. So I read this thing about Harry Houdini and I thought, that would be great. Get an illusionist on the show. The very next day I get your email and I thought, what, this is just too good to be true. So what I did want to mention about Houdini was this article that I read, and I'll just kind of paraphrase it. But basically, London newspaper challenged him to escape from these handcuffs that a locksmith in England had made that took him 7 years to make these special handcuffs. They were supposed to be the most unescapable handcuffs of the day. They challenged Houdini to escape from them. So he accepted the challenge. There were 4,000 people in the audience, plus like 100 journalists or something. He gets up on stage. He's got like for lack of a better word, it's like a tent, except it's like sort of like mosquito net, where you can see him in a silhouette. You can see him in there, but you can't see like all the details, because obviously he didn't want to give away how he managed to get out of these handcuffs. Make a long story short, he goes up on stage. He's handcuffed, gets into this sort of tent thing. He's in there for an hour and 10 minutes. wiggling and fidgeting and moving all about. And finally, after an hour and 10 minutes, he comes out and he's escaped from the handcuffs. And of course, they paraded him down the street and he was a hero and blah, 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 blah. My takeaway from reading that article is, could you imagine an audience today sitting there for an hour and 10 minutes while you were like behind a screen wiggling and fidgeting around for an hour and 10 minutes? I think they would have got up and left after about 3. When I saw your necklace illusion, that was 2 minutes long, right? That was it. It was done. 2 minutes. And I'm thinking, imagine doing something like that for an hour and 10 minutes. Nobody would have any patience to sit there at all. That's what I was amazed by with that article.
You're right. Times have certainly changed. I mean, audiences back then with the pacing of shows, I often wonder if there was a time machine and you can go back in time and take some of the magic from today back there. Just the pacing of it is so different. It has to be, because we're so used to information coming at us so fast in so many different ways. But you're right. I thought the exact same thing, to sit there for, over an hour and watch it. But back in those days, it was suspenseful. And as the time went on, instead of getting less exciting, it became almost more exciting to those audiences, where it became, they started to run in their mind, well, what if he's doing this? Or what if this happens? And the suspense was, these were the days of even, and this might have even been slightly before, but like radio shows where people would listen to the radio shows and their imaginations would fill in the blanks. But I think back in those days, I think the imagination was one of the prevalent tools in entertainment. And I think that's what people were used to. And I think that really, that helped that. But you're right. Today you'd come out and I think the theater would be, could be empty out there.
Yeah, it just amazed me, because I know one of his other famous tricks was the upside down in the water tank, but that only took 3 minutes because that was about as long as he could hold his breath. So, that one is plausible that they could probably pull that off today. I can't imagine the escaping the handcuffs one for an hour and 10 minutes. I just couldn't see that happening, but, times have changed.
Yeah, and you know what? The interesting thing is that almost 100 years later, we're still talking about it. Think about that.
True.
Not only was it amazing that they were able to build that suspense with that piece for that long, but the duration, the story of that has lasted, really tells you how strongly that went over when they did it. So, that was clearly a story that's been passed down from generation to generation. So, how many people today will be talked about in 100 years? That tells you the impact that somebody like Houdini had on that generation.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, at the end of that story, it said that he broke down and cried. And later in an interview, he said that was the most difficult escape of his career.
One of the secrets to Houdini was that he was a symbol of overcoming difficulties, of overcoming challenges. I think people related to him. I think, you're looking at a time where it was kind of right before the Industrial Revolution. It was a difficult, it wasn't, what you would call an easy time period. I think as in any time period, there were struggles. And I think people could look at him and go, okay, he can do all these impossible things. Maybe what I want to do isn't that tough after all. So I think, he felt like, certainly if you're put in that position and you feel like you're giving that to people, you don't want to let them down. So I think even escaping from the handcuffs, I think symbolically that became very important. I think that's one of the reasons why Houdini's story has endured, is that it's related to people on an emotional level, that overcoming challenges. I think that connected with people.
Well, I think that's a good point, and especially at the time when he was, because that was right at the British class system was still very, very strong. And there was a huge line between the rich and the poor. Theater shows like that were generally for the lower classes of people. The rich went to the opera and the ballet, but escape artists were generally for the lower class and the middle class people in England. It was escapism. It was a way that they could, as well as what you're saying about the whole, if he did that, my life shouldn't be so bad. There was a message there, but it was also pure fantasy kind of theater, which I think people in those situations needed. I think we still need it today. That's one of the reasons why I love watching illusions and things, and I always did, one of my favorite shows as a little kid was Bewitched. I still like watching that show now because it was just so well done. But just the idea, that she could fly, she could make things disappear, she could levitate things, all in this neatly little packaged family half-an-hour show. It was great.
Well, that's really, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that's the appeal of magic, is that people can watch a magic show and just let go of the stress, feel the amazement, feel uplifted by it. I can't tell you how many times we've done shows where people come in after a long day of work and you see them tired and you see them, stressed, and you see them and at intermission or at the end of the show, they look like this giant weight's been lifted off of them because they let go, they relaxed, they laughed, they felt amazed. I think that's the same effect that you're talking about there, is that it's escapism. It's recharging, people's kind of, spirits.
Exactly. And like you said at the beginning of the show, well, I'm not going to talk about how I did it. I wouldn't want to know, because if I knew how you did it, it would spoil the fantasy, wouldn't it? It would completely ruin it. Yeah.
It definitely would. And you know what? The thing is where else in life do you get to feel amazed? I mean, we'll go through the rest of our days today, and we may not feel that sense of amazement. I mean, with everything that's coming at us, we'll feel, there's just a lot of information coming at us, but none of it really gives us that sense of wow, that sense of amazement. So magic really fulfills a rare kind of need. So, I would hate to take that away from people.
I agree with you. I think that's something that should just be kept secret. Keep the fantasy alive, because that's what we're really going to see. You know what, Michael? Our half an hour just zipped right by. I mean, it's like over. And it's too bad, because I really could talk to you for a long time. This was an interesting conversation.
This was great. I really appreciate it. And you know what? Hopefully we can do it again. I can't believe the half hour disappeared, if you pardon the expression, so fast.
Oh, it's gone. I would love to have you come back on the show. Maybe we'll do like a part 2 or something in a couple of months. I think that would be great. Can you just tell everybody, are you performing somewhere now, or are you going to be performing? Can you give us your kind of schedule for the moment so people could come see you if you're performing?
Yes, we travel all over the country. We're on the road probably 75% of the year. So if anybody out there sees a magician with a big, long Italian last name coming to their town, it's probably me.
All right.
So please do come and see us. Our website, michaelgrandinetti.com, Facebook, Twitter. We always keep, everything updated as to where we're going to be. We have 2 television shows coming out in 2016. So keep an eye out for those. Coming up in the near future, we're going to be performing on the Hollywood Christmas Parade, which is going to air on the CW on December the 11th at 8 o'clock. So I hope people can tune in and see some magic on Hollywood Boulevard. And besides that, it's a great show and a great parade. I think people will really love it. So we have a lot of stuff coming up, and I hope people have a chance to see it, and I hope they enjoy it.
Do you ever come to Las Vegas? Do you ever play in the casinos and the Strip?
I do. We get to Las Vegas quite a bit. The next time we're there, I'll send you some tickets. You have to come and see us.
Oh, I'd love to. That would be, thank you. I would love to come see you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Definitely. All right. Well, Michael, I want to thank you again for coming on the show. It was a treat to talk to you, and very informative as well.
Thank you. My pleasure. I really appreciate you having me on. It was great talking with you.
Well, that's all the time we've got for the show today. I want to thank my special guests, John Jenkins and Michael Grandinetti. This is Douglas Coleman saying goodbye.
To the